kind of what I wanted to dive in today was, I was in rehab 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and really I think my biggest issue was dealing with my pain, dealing with the sensitivity, kind of what you talked about, and numbing that. And it's been
Yeah.
a really great 2 years, but over the last few months, there's been a sadness and
Mm.
a a pain that and a grief that I'm realizing that I have to engage with. Um,
Okay.
and so I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. And really what it is I'm realizing that feeling sad or feeling hurt or that pain is a part of life, and it's okay for me to feel that way. And so I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
I'd like to know more about you.
Okay.
What be before I respond. So the sadness that you're experiencing, how does it show up for you?
Well, I was thinking about it last night. Sometimes it'll show up in frustration at first, or this anxious feeling, and I'm not really knowing why I'm feeling it.
Okay.
And then as I think it through, that then it'll turn into more of a sadness, and it's really, I think, this grief that there's a lot of things that I didn't feel for a long time. And now I'm feeling them, and I feel like I was taught that you don't touch those feelings. You keep those locked away. And so then I'll think that there's something wrong with me. There's a reaction to it, and I'm like, why am I feeling like this? But then I come to a realization that maybe I'm supposed to be feeling these feelings.
Well, so here's the thing. Addictions, whether to drugs or behaviors, whether it's heroin or fentanyl or cocaine or crystal meth or nicotine or caffeine or alcohol or gambling or sex or pornography or shopping or whatever it is, they're not diseases. They're actually normal responses to abnormal circumstances.
Wow.
So if I ask you this question, normal, but of course they create problems, you know. Um, so let me give you a definition of addiction, right from my book, The Myth of Normal. So addiction is manifested in any behavior in which a person finds some temporary relief or pleasure and therefore craves, but then suffers negative consequences in the long term and doesn't give up. That's what addiction is.
Right.
So it can be drugs, but it could be a lot of other behaviors. So the first question for me is not what was wrong with your addiction, but what was right about it. So what did it give you in the short term that you wanted, do you think?
It gave me good feelings. It made me feel okay. It helped me get to this functioning normal that
Okay.
I was able to live.
Okay.
But yeah,
So when you say it made you feel okay, how did you feel without them?
extreme anxiety, extreme panic. Um,
Okay, anxiety and panic. So it gave you some peace of mind, some relief of stress. Is that right?
yes, but then as you said, it
Yeah,
then could turn into
it
that.
creates. That's the nature of addiction. But in the first place, it alleviated your anxiety and your stress, right?
Yes,
Now, in itself, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
it's a good thing.
Okay, so the addiction wasn't your problem. The addiction was your attempt to solve the problem
Right.
of emotional distress.
Yes.
And so my mantra is, and basically all addictions are attempt to escape emotional pain. So my mantra is don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain.
Mm,
Now, now if you have to look at people's pain, you need to look at their lives. Stuff happened to them. Stuff happened to you. There's no doubt. I mean, I don't know you,
mhm.
but stuff happened to you. It's totally natural that when you stop the addiction, then the pain and the anxiety that you've been running away from will come flooding in.
Yes.
And that's actually, you know what that is? That's a sign of strength
Mm,
because it means that your organism now has the confidence that you uh, JB can now handle the pain. Now you can deal with it, the
Right.
anxiety, whereas before you couldn't. So first of all, I would welcome those feelings because it's a sign that you're actually growing.
Wow. That's
Okay.
really,
Okay, that's the first thing.
yeah.
The second thing is tell me how the anxiety feels like in your body that you experience, or the frustration, whatever happens for you. What do you experience in your body?
I always feel it in my stomach. It's this like knot in my stomach.
It's a tightness and not in your stomach. Okay, let me answer this question. How familiar is that feeling to you?
Very familiar.
How far does it go back?
Before I can remember, I think, 4 or 5 years
Okay,
old.
okay, so at least till 4 or 5, probably even before. Yeah. Okay. So then I can tell you two things without knowing anything about you personally. I can tell you two things. Okay. When I was in family practice as a physician, I used to see these kids with these stomach aches that nobody could diagnose. There's nothing wrong, they'd say. Yes, there was.
Mm,
But what happened was these kids were the sensitive kids who picked up on all the family stress,
mm,
and it showed up in their guts. These are called gut feelings. So I can tell you that in your family of origin, A, there was a lot of stress, a lot of conflict, a lot of tension. B, you were a sensitive child who picked up on all this like the canary in the mine. And three, for all I know, some bad stuff happened to you that gave you all kinds of reasons to be anxious. Now, how accurate would that be?
completely accurate. Complete.
Okay. So the difference is that as a child, and and I know what the answer is going to be because it's always the same, but I can ask you anyway. When you had this tension and anxiety and fear and whatever it was you were experiencing as a child, who did you go to for help?
Usually it was a pleasing, I pleased. Um,
I'm asking, who did you go for help? Who did you say, I'm feeling really bad, please help me?
no one. Myself.
Okay.
Myself.
Now, do you have kids?
I don't yet.
Okay, if you had a 4 or 5 year old who felt really bad, anxious, tight, gut aching, who would you want them to go to?
Me or my wife.
So the parents,
Yes.
which means that you were alone,
Yes.
emotionally alone. Okay, that means there was nobody to go to. Well, that's unbearable for a child. And all I can do is to suppress those emotions, which then get lodged in the body. Then later on, when you can, you escape into addictions. And naturally, when you stop the addictive behavior, that's gonna come flood back in again, saying, I'm still here.
Right.
You need to pay attention to me, you know?
Right.
So what I'm saying is what you're experiencing is perfectly natural.
Does the pain ever go away, or is there, a graduation to a different type of feeling, or is this just something that I need to just continue to embrace?
Well, can I ask you to check in with your body right now?
Please.
What's happening there right now?
I think there's a maybe a bit of anxiety,
How is that showing up in your body? Anxiety is a word. What's the actual physical feeling?
maybe some tightness in my chest right now.
Okay, good. Are you willing to pay attention to it?
Yes. I'm willing to.
Let's just pay attention to the
Okay.
tension.
Okay.
In fact, my mantra is another mantra of mine is whenever there's tension, it needs attention.
Mm.
Okay, so let's just pay attention to it. And I'm going to ask you a question. Now, maybe nothing will come up. Maybe something will come up. Okay, I'm going to snap my fingers and ask a question and just say whatever comes up. If nothing comes up, don't force it. Don't try to please me. Okay, no
Yep.
reason. Okay, I don't need to be pleased. So if nothing happens, nothing happens. But pay attention to that tension. Okay, and what does it want from you?
I think I just wanted me to let it know that I knew it was there.
Exactly.
Hmm.
So why don't you do that? Let it know that you're here.
Yeah.
You know, and keep paying attention to it.
Why does it want attention?
Why does it want attention? Because it's a 4-year-old child. And what does a 4-year-old want when they're feeling bad?
Attention.
That's all they need.
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's really good.
So just checking with your body again. Tell me about the quality of the tension that's there now.
It's it's a way lower of tension, I feel like, because I validated it. It stopped rearing its head as much.
There's the answer to your question. You asked, will it ever go away? When you say, will it ever go away? You're basically saying, I don't want you.
Mm,
I don't like you. I don't want you. But I'm telling you, that's a 4 or 5-year-old kid or even younger inside you. How does a kid feel when you tell him, I don't want you, go away?
upset, and it gets even worse.
Come back when you're smiling and happy and ready to please me. Okay?
So I'm doing to that little kid what my parents did to me.
Precisely.
Wow.
Which is why it's stuck in this tension. Now, if you pay attention to it and ask it some questions and just get into a relationship with it, just like you just did, believe me, no, the pain doesn't have to stick around. But
Mm,
when it does come up, it's trying to tell you something. So you pay attention to it.
it's
It's
really
really
good.
very, it's really very straightforward.
Wow.
And all your addiction, it wasn't a disease. It wasn't some bad choice that you made. It wasn't some weakness of will. It was just your organism trying to soothe the pain and the anxiety and the fear that were lodged in your system
Mm,
when you were helpless and small and alone. That's all it is.
wow. It's so good. Um, is there a reason, was really the addiction and the rehab for me, was that just me learning to feel those, or learning to feel safe to where I could feel these feelings? Like why is it that I picked up this addiction instead of feeling like I am now, like to where I can not be addicted to something, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, tell me how well you speak Swahili,
I don't speak it at all.
or you don't speak Swahili. How, how come you don't speak Swahili?
Because I've never learned it.
Uh-huh. And whoever taught you to deal with emotions?
No one.
Well, that's why. So
So
what,
people, yeah.
so what you're doing now is you're learning essentially a new language, a new way of communicating with yourself, a new way of relating to yourself. But in the absence of that, of course, you try to run away into addiction.
Mm,
And then the rehab helped you give up the behavior and probably helped you gain some degree of self acceptance.
for sure.
And now you're ready to take the further step of dealing with these emotions that you've been running away from. That's all. It's just a natural process.
Wow. Wow. What would you say to, like, what would you say to people that are in the midst of addiction, um, that need
I,
to
would-
take a step?
I would ask them, first of all, I would say to them, I totally get it. Right now, you're caught in some emotions you don't even want to feel because they're so scary and so daunting. And I get it. I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm not going to make you wrong for it. But what is it doing for you? Not the same question I asked you. Not what's wrong about it, or what's right about it. What is it giving you? And when I ask that question, people say, well, it numbs my pain, it makes me feel more in control, it connects with other people, it soothes my stress, it gives me more peace of mind, sense of vitality. I say, well, are those good things or bad things?
Mm.
Yeah, well, those are good things. Well, then the real question is, again, and I make the point in both my books, is not why the addiction, but what happened to you that you feel such stress? What happened to you that you have to numb the pain? What's the pain you're trying to numb? What are you trying to run away from? What happened to you? Can we talk about that?
And I've talked to a lot of people that are in this spot, and I'll ask them a question like this, and they'll say they don't remember, or nothing really happened to me as a kid. And
Yeah,
how do
yeah.
you deal with that?
Well, first of all, it's not a matter of remembering, because they do remember, they just don't recall.
Mm,
Okay, let me make that distinction. Memory, what we call memory, is actually just one kind of memory. It's recall. And recall is we can call back something consciously. So you can recall what you had for breakfast this morning. You can recall something that happened a year ago or even 20 years ago. That's one kind of memory. But there's another kind of memory called the implicit memory, which is not conscious recall, but the emotional and physical imprints of early experiences. They
mm,
live in the present. So this tension that you experienced in your belly or in your chest, that's a memory.
mm.
You may not recall what happened to cause it, but it's a memory. So if I was talking to somebody like that, I'd say, okay, so you don't recall stuff. Tell me what's in your body right now. And then I'd say, how familiar is that feeling to you? They may not recall incidents and episodes, but body states, they're with us in the present. They're memories.
Wow.
I mean, when you talked about the tension in your chest, is there anything in the present moment that should be causing you tension?
No, and I think that's what confuses me.
That's the whole point. It's a memory.
Yeah, right,
That's the memory. It's the
right.
body memory. It's called implicit memory. Explicit memory is recall. Implicit memory is the emotional imprints of experiences without the recall.
Wow.
So that's the first point. The second point is you give me anybody who says I had a happy childhood, I had an addiction, but I had a happy childhood, or I don't remember. It takes me 3 minutes. Literally, it takes me 3 minutes to guide them to understand what actually happened to them. Because actually, they remember more than they think they do. It's just they're not asked the right questions.
Wow. Would you mind taking those 3 minutes to do that with me? If or
Well, do you have trouble recalling what happened to you?
I have trouble recalling, um, I have trouble recalling maybe some of the things that happened. I can just give you some background real quick on me, but uh,
Okay, yeah. Let's try this. Tell me about your childhood. Okay.
um, I was born into a pastor's home. So my dad is a pastor. My mom is a pastor's wife, really just stay-at-home mom. I'm the oldest of three boys, and my dad was my coach. He was my dad, and he was also
I'm going to stop you right now. Okay.
yeah, okay.
Because do you remember what the question was?
Uh, the question was, tell me what? No, I don't remember the question actually.
The question was, tell me about your childhood.
And I'm telling
Okay.
you about
And who did you start telling me about?
my dad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that tells me something right away.
Okay.
That from an early age on, you had to pay more attention to what was happening outside you than inside you.
Yes. No doubt.
Okay. Now that's a reason for that. A newborn baby is completely in touch with what's happening inside themselves. At some point, you had to kind of lose that focus and start paying attention just to the outside.
Right.
So that's
And
the first. So I'm going to ask you again. Tell me about your childhood.
it was I remember it being walking on a lot of eggshells and wanting to please mom and dad a lot and being scared to
Okay.
let them know how I feel or be myself.
What else do you need to know?
Say that again.
What else do you need to know?
I mean, I guess I don't need to know anything.
You
Um,
know, I mean, what does it mean to walk on eggshells?
means I was scared to be around them. I was scared to be honest with them.
No. When a newborn, when a new human being comes into the world, what do you think they expect? What is the expectation of the infant
That they will be loved and accepted.
for who they are, that they'll be safe?
Hmm.
So I don't even know what, I don't even need to know what happened in your home, but there you are. Instead of feeling safe and accepted and secure, you feel scared.
Hmm.
Now we can make two assumptions. You tell me which you'd like to work with. Either that you're crazy or you're not crazy. Which would you like to work with?
That I'm not crazy.
Well, then you had reason to be scared.
Mm.
Even if you don't recall what happened to make you scared, you had reason to be scared. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been.
Right.
Now, do you know what happened to make you scared?
I think my mom, there's two parts. My mom was very fearful, um,
Okay.
due to her childhood, and um, her dad was, a drug addict, alcoholic, and very all over the place. And then
Okay.
my dad was very rigid,
Okay.
um, and I don't know what exact moments happened to where I felt that way, but I think it was just what I felt. It was this.
Well, look, so first of all, let me read you something. I just need to find it on my computer here, okay?
Okay.
Um, Now, don't forget what I said about sensitivity. Now, the word sensitivity comes from the Latin word sensere, to feel. And the more sensitive you are, the more you feel.
Hmm.
So some children are just born more sensitive, okay? Now, let me read you something. It says, if I can just find it. Okay, the child is very open and can feel the pain and suffering going on in its immediate environment. The child is aware of its own body and can also feel the tension, rigidity, and pain in the body of the mother or of anyone else he is with. If the mother is suffering, the baby suffers too. The pain never gets discharged.
Hmm.
So if your mother was carrying all this pain and with the addicted father and also you'd pick up on that
Wow.
because
I definitely.
the baby's brain is actually developed in interaction with the parents' brains. That's how the brain develops. When there's a lot of fear and anxiety in your mother, I had the same infancy. I didn't have the same infancy. I had similar experiences in infancy. As a Jewish infant under the Nazi occupation in Hungary, my mother had a lot of fear when I was a baby and a lot of grief. I picked up on all that.
Hmm.
You know, babies can't help it. So even if nothing happened to you specifically, just with your mother being like that,
Hmm.
you you'd pick up on that. You follow that?
I follow that completely.
Okay, now number one. Number two, here's the bad news, folks. We always marry somebody at the same level of trauma that we're at.
Wow.
So even if the trauma shows up differently, your father's rigidity is a sign of trauma as well.
Yes.
When do we go stiff and rigid?
When we get really scared.
Exactly. Your father was just as scared as your mother.
Hmm.
It's only that it showed up in a rigidity. that masquerades as strength and maybe masculine power, but actually there's a lot of fear underneath it.
Wow.
So you're being brought up in a home where your parents, who are doing their best, I'm not blaming them,
Right.
but are radiating a lot of fear to you.
Right.
Then of course, their behavior is going to reflect all that.
Yeah. Is there, I think a lot of times I want there to be a redemption for them as well. Do you see that a lot, or is that like too high of hopes or not my problem, or how should I be thinking of, wanting them to find hope and wanting to end this in the family line, if I could say.
Yeah. Well, that's a natural and humane wish, isn't it? I mean, compassion means that we don't want people to suffer,
Hmm.
especially people that we personally care about.
Yes.
But there's nothing you can directly do about it. It's their journey. What you can do is to do your own work.
Mm.
And possibly that's going to have some impact on them, or maybe open them up. The more open and confident and relaxed that you seem to them, if you're in a relationship with them, the more might they want to know what's going on. How did this happen? You
That's
know, you might want to, they're open to it, give them the copy of the myth of normal and say, look, please read this, even if you don't agree with it, just read it.
I will
Okay.
definitely do that.
You know, um, my son, Daniel, with whom I wrote the myth of normal, um, I just show you the book. Uh, so it's Gabor Mate with Daniel Mate, and Daniel's my son, and I wrote the book with him, and him and I are now writing a new book together. It's called Hello Again: A Fresh Start for Parents and Adult Children,
Wow.
based on a workshop that we do. So it's possible to create a new relationship for adults with their parents and vice versa, as long as there's a mutual willingness to do so.
Mm.
But what I don't suggest you do is you go in there like an evangelist trying to change them.
Yeah. Can't do that.
That that ain't never gonna work, you
Yep.
know. So if you can say, look, mom, dad, I found out some things, and I, if you're interested, I'd like to tell you about them or show you this book or whatever, but no pressure and no expectation. And ultimately, it's not your responsibility.
Yeah. I think I'm dealing with another thing that I'm dealing with right now is that it's like this guilt or people pleasing as I'm individualizing or pulling away from them because it's like I'm 29 years old now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel myself feeling guilty for not, pleasing them, even if they haven't asked me to.
Yeah.
And
Well, let me ask you a question. When in your life have you not felt guilty?
never.
Okay. So you've always felt guilty, right?
Mhm.
Now, what do you think you felt guilty about?
I felt guilty that they weren't happy.
Okay. So naturally, if you had a 3-year-old child or a 4-year-old child and you and your spouse weren't happy, you turn to the kid and saying, hey kid, it's your fault. It's your responsibility. Is that what you would do?
Never.
How come?
Because it's not their fault at all.
Ah, but
Right.
you made it yours, didn't you?
I did.
So the question is, are you willing to apply to yourself the same standard that you'd apply to somebody else? And,
Yes.
here, and here's the thing about that guilt. It's natural. You know why it's natural? Because kids are narcissists. And when I say narcissists, I don't mean in a pathological sense. I mean that they take everything personally. They
Mm.
think it's all about them. So when the parents are unhappy, guess whose fault it is?
The kid's
In
fault.
in the kid's mind. Let me tell you an experience that I had, and I talk about this in the myth of normal. Sometimes I work with psychedelics, and both as a healer, but also, personally. So I was in this psychedelic session um, 7 years ago now. I'm 80 years old now. So I was 73, 72 years old then. I was the client. I was with this therapist and I knew who she was. She was a therapist. I knew who I was, doctor, author, so on. So there was no confusion in my mind. But at the same time, under the influence of the mushroom, I experienced myself as a 1-year-old baby.
Wow.
And this therapist was like my mother. No, I wasn't hallucinating. I knew that this was a mushroom session. I knew who I was, where I was, with whom I was, but at the same time, I had the consciousness of a 1-year-old baby, and this was my mother. And I started crying, and I said to her, "I'm so sorry I made your life so difficult."
Mm.
Now, when I was a year old, my mother had an extraordinarily difficult time of it. Again, this is still the
Yeah.
second one. I took it on as an infant.
Wow.
And that's what kids do. So your guilt has nothing to do with you doing anything wrong. It has to do with your sense that if things are not well, it's your responsibility. And kids, that's what they believe. Now, there's something strange about that, or not strange, but intriguing about that. Because I'm saying that even that guilt had a protective value for you.
Mm.
Now, because let me give you this question. Things aren't going well. You're not loved the way you need to be loved. You feel scared. Your parents are unhappy. The child can make two assumptions unconsciously. One is the world is a dangerous place. I'm all alone. My parents are incapable of meeting my needs. Or the child can feel all this is happening because of me. And if I work hard enough, maybe I can fix it. If I work hard enough and please them, maybe they'll love me. Maybe they'll be happy. Now,
Wow.
which assumption do you think is easier for the child to make?
The latter.
Yeah. So even that guilt came along to protect you because it kept you working hard enough to try and please your parents to try and get the love that you needed. But
Mm.
it also means you have to give up your own needs and your own feelings.
So it's a type of survival.
It's a survival thing. That's all it is. So that when you feel the guilt now, it's what I call a stupid friend. You know, it came along at a time to help you. It's a friend in that way,
Mm.
but it's kind of stupid because it can't learn that you're no longer that 3-year-old kid anymore and you don't need it anymore.
Right.
So when you feel the guilt, just say, okay, hello, here you are again.
Wow.
Don't be afraid of the guilt. Just hello,
Right.
but I don't need to listen to you.
It's really good. It's really good. Um, and you kind of talk about that as I took on this guilt. A lot of us take on this guilt, and then I start making decisions to numb that guilt, and then I'm really guilty.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
it,
Oh yeah. Then we do a lot of stupid things that are
yeah.
hurt. Yeah, I mean, look, I had my own addictive behaviors, and I lied to my wife, and
Yep.
I neglected my kids. I even sometimes neglected my work to pursue my addictions, and that's what addiction will do. And yeah, then you do the 12 steps. If you do, and you do a moral inventory, and you say, "Oh my God, I really did behave in ways that were hurtful." That's healthy remorse.
Mm.
Healthy remorse is a good thing,
Hmm.
but guilt is something else.
Right.
Because healthy remorse says, I did something I wish I hadn't. I'm going to make amends for it if I can. Guilt says, there's something wrong with me. I'm a bad person.
That's really good. I think what helped me solve that was, the resentment list in step four and
Yeah,
understanding where they were wrong and where I was wrong and
yeah, yeah.
bringing both of them together.
My problem with the 12 steps is I think the 12 steps are great. I mean, I think any human being on earth would benefit from doing the 12 steps, whether they're addicted or not. The problem is that they don't talk about trauma.
Mm,
They tend to talk about addiction as a brain disease.
yes.
It isn't. It's a response to trauma. It's
Yeah.
a response to pain. And it's rather strange because Bill W., one of the founders of AA, was a traumatized child. He was abandoned by his parents. He had a lot of pain. And so I just wish the 12-step movement would incorporate an understanding of trauma into their teachings
Mm.
rather than just looking at the addiction as kind of as a problem or as a disease to get rid of.
Or it's permanent. It's the addiction, like you're saying, the addiction's not permanent.
Yeah,
It's dealing with this back here.
yeah,
Um, I
yeah.
really well, I really appreciate you. And if anything from this time, I learned a lot, and I learned, you know, I've been dealing with a lot of feelings lately, and it's confusing to me, and I'm wanting to understand them, and you've helped me to do that. And so I really appreciate it. If
Well,
there's
you're
one,
welcome. Are you talking to anybody? Are you talking to anybody?
yes, I am.
Okay,
I
is
am.
that helping? Is that helping?
It is helping. But sometimes I don't know what to talk about. And it's been weird over the last couple days. I was on a trip, and we did like a little trauma trip, healing trip with a group of men, and I just was sad. And I realized that I'd been over the last few months, I'd been frustrated to scared. And then all of a sudden it was like this sadness. And I realized that the root of this, even under the sadness, was me being scared. There's,
Yeah.
that was the root of it, is fear. And so it was just kind of fresh on my mind as we came into this, to where I wanted to know what you thought. And so I
Oh,
appreciate you taking the
well, I can ask you something. When you say you don't know what to talk about, how do you feel not knowing what to talk about?
scared because it's like I don't know what's wrong, or I don't know if,
Okay.
yeah,
And do you feel a responsibility to have something to say?
for sure.
Okay. And if I came to you and if I said, "Hey, JB, I have some confused feelings and I don't know what to say," would you say to me, "Well, Gabor, there's something obviously wrong with you. Get over it," or, would you say that?
I wouldn't say that,
How come you wouldn't say it?
because I feel it too.
Yeah, but
I know how they feel.
you're making yourself wrong for it.
Right, right.
So why don't you just say, "I don't know what to say"?
Yeah. I think that's probably the most authentic and vulnerable thing I could say, is I don't
Yeah,
know what to say.
yeah, and but here I am. I don't know what to say, and is that okay with you? Or can I be with you? Or can it's something.
Yeah,
These are just normal human dynamics. But with the upbringing that you had, and a lot of people had, people make themselves wrong for it.
yeah. Or there's a performance aspect of,
Yeah,
you have to perform to,
you have to perform in order to be acceptable.
yes,
Well, notice that every time it shows up, because you wouldn't do it to anybody else.
I wouldn't. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay,
Well, thank you so much.
my
And
pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you. Take
You
care.
too. Thank you.